Welcome to Monarchist Minute, Royalist news and discussion out of the good old US of A. Continuing on with our monarchical, philosophical ramblings, it is time to discuss monarchist works of fiction. Hopefully, we will find something other than Lord of the Rings, but I'm telling you, as someone who is rereading it, it's going to be difficult to top it. I'm just saying. So, without any further ado, we should probably start. Now, going by the customary order, which is also the laziest, just reading the names off the screen like a book, Joe, give us some monarchist works of fiction that are glorious and worthwhile.
I do
Didn't
not believe
Charles Cologne
Joe's.
write a
Absolute
Oh, there he
monarchist
is.
fiction book?
I don't think he writes fiction. I think he writes non-fiction.
Oh.
And Joe is out of ideas. How about we start with the person who has the most
Yeah.
ideas, Chuck?
My alter ego?
No, you.
Oh, okay, good.
Oh.
Because he was a little tired today. Anyways, so as I said, I'm rereading Lord of the Rings. I actually got the original trilogy, the trilogy, the prequel trilogy to Lord of the Rings. Anyways, I'm rereading Lord of the Rings. Got it for my 10th birthday, which was just over 10 years ago now. Still have the gift receipt, funnily enough. I don't think it's still good, but uh, my dad and I returned the King, swapping turns, passing it back and forth to read it. And I got to tell you, this book. If people ask, why you're a monarchist, this book contains a lot of those answers. I mean, obviously, none of these people are real. None of their, valor and deeds are real. But as with any good fiction, there is truth there, right? And in this case, there's a lot of truth, but particularly the truth is that great men will still do great things even when all hope is set against them. And you can say, oh, everything is, played up for dramatic effect and, nothing ever happened like this in real history. Firstly, you're wrong. Secondly, yeah, so what? It's supposed to get a point across. And, I'm at spoiler alerts, by the way, the aftermath of the charge of the Rohirrim and the plains of Gondor.
Rohirrim.
I say Rohirrim. You know what? It's been a while since I've seen the movies. I get to pronounce it however I want because the books don't come with a pronunciation guide in the front. I need to buy the Silmarillion. So forgive me.
I was going to say, you'd think given Tolkien it would.
Yeah, well, I think you're supposed to buy the particular edition. You're supposed to buy The Hobbit, the original, the which I have from a different publication. So you're supposed to buy The Hobbit, the trilogy, and then the Silmarillion all together. So yeah, but I did know that the hobbits invented pipeweed. So, anyways, the thing is that in this battle, once again, spoilers. Theoden, the king of the king of the Mark, gets slain in this glorious charge, and then Meriadoc finally picks up his courage and slays the king of the Nazgul, with after the example of Theoden's daughter. And once again, all these characters are fiction, right? Like they never existed. Gondor doesn't exist. Rohan doesn't exist. None of this ever happened. But that whole men will do great things if they follow other men, is true. And see, this is why part of the reason I'm a monarchist, because no piece of paper is ever going to set out when the hope of the world is fading and you are not the only hope, but you are one of the few faint hopes left in the world to try and stem the tide of evil. And yes, evil isn't as plain and white. It's not like there's a bunch of orcs running about who are trying and marauding, and it's very clear to tell who, but just by looking, who's the bad guy and who's the good guy. In some cases, it really is easy to tell who's the bad guy and who's the good guy, but in other cases, it's it's failed. And even in Lord of the Rings, there are some good guys disguised, bad guys disguised as good guys. But it really is this true thing that men can do things. A piece of paper like a constitution is just a dead letter, right? The Constitution in America's darkest hours has never ridden forth to stem the tide, right? Washington, for all the faults of the revolution, at least Washington actually rode forward and commanded in battle. The Constitution never commanded a battle in his life because it's a piece of paper, right? Jackson, for any faults he had, actually was there at the Battle of New Orleans. Where was the Constitution? It was sitting in D.C. somewhere, which was probably busy being burned to the ground. Yeah, where was the Constitution when D.C. was burning? Just kind of sitting there, right? It's that's the thing, right? Of all there are so many lessons you can draw from Lord of the Rings, but this loyalty, right? So the two hobbits everyone remembers, is Frodo and Sam, but Merry and Pippin, or Peregrine and Meriadoc, if you want to use the full names, both of them swear fealty, in their own, well, in the same manner essentially, to the Lord of the Mark, the King of Rohan, and to the Steward of Gondor, and that is something, because it's swearing allegiance to someone. It's swearing allegiance to a living person who can do something, and that is the reason why right now, and maybe things will change, why I can't join the army despite I want to, is that as a Catholic I can't lie under oath. I'm not gonna risk damning my soul to lie under oath. But I can't swear allegiance to the Constitution. I can't. To defend the land, yes. To defend, to defend somebody who is in service of truth and justice, yeah. To a piece of paper, I just can't. It's not the Bible. It's not like it's not like the Constitution is the word of God. That the Bible is, that the Constitution isn't a divinely inspired text. What does this Constitution have? What does it have above and beyond, the actual noblemen of the world, who actually live, like, Saint King Louis the Ninth and Blessed Karl of Austria? I'm asking you, what does it have that these don't? I mean,
Mhm.
I guess that's my 10-minute spiel. Well, not 10-minute, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
You're getting there. You were getting there. So, Joe, have you prepared yourself something to speak on?
Yeah, I actually chose two of them.
Ooh, feel free.
Now, I don't read a lot, especially these two books that I have chosen, but hey, if you want something, then let me recommend it to you. First up, we got A Star-Spangled Crown.
Yeah,
Ooh.
that's a good one. I've also read that.
Yeah, written by our very famous Charles Colomb.
Very nice.
I will say, speaking of things that brought you to tears, the most of the book isn't narrative. It's only the introduction that explains how the American monarchy gets established in this world, because the book takes place in the future. It starts with the election of 2016 went just about as bad as could be expected, and only got worse from there. I'm paraphrasing, but that's essentially what it was. Only the first part is narrative, but that first part, that really hits. And if you say, "Oh, it's fiction," the particular part that hits, and you'll know what I'm talking about if you get to it. That part was based on a real event. So don't tell me that stuff like this doesn't happen. Okay, if you don't believe that acts of gallantry like that actually happen, you live in a very sad world. I'm sorry, Joe. Continue.
Perfectly fine, Charles. Anyways, the second book.
Has been redacted as, well, we don't want to give it promotion. My censorship regime is absolute, and several references to it throughout the rest of this video, or at least one other, will be eradicated. So, ha, ha, ha.
Yeah, that book is. I mean, if we want to spend the episode trashing on that book, we can begin now. But
Only if
yeah,
Charles
no.
wants to. Do you want to trash on a spare, Charles?
Well, we're not really trashing on a book written by a prince. We're trashing on a book written by a prince's ghostwriter, so I don't see how it's relevant.
Fair enough. He makes a good point. Well, as for I'm obviously not exactly a fan of romance books, but I actually haven't gotten the chance to read Charles Colombe's book. I need to get and read some of his literature. I've heard it's really good. But
the brief rundown. So of the 4 books that I have, White Cockade is the collection of poems. That's the shortest, but I think that I do think that would be the best one to start with. Then was it Puritan's Empire: A Catholic Perspective on American History, for some American history from a Catholic perspective. Then Blessed Karl of Austria, and then probably Star Spangled Crown. And remember, if you are a patron at TumblrHouse.com, you get free shipping. Some exclusions apply. No cash on delivery, and you can have the book if you order direct from Tumblr House. You can have the book attached, tied to a string, and thrown through your window at no extra cost to you. Be the first on your block.
Of course, you would
that
have to
checks
pay for
out.
the window repair.
Yeah, for a good book, what's the true cost?
Some assembly required.
Just get some sand and
some
melt it
assembly.
into glass.
Oh boy.
Sorry, no CODs.
Let's see. If there are people who
Although, I will say that yes, Trad, I did get the joke about the novel Spare, and I would be all in favor of spending the whole time trashing that dude.
We can do that later. So actually, since you're talking, do you have any works that you wanted to talk about, Victor? Since we're doing book club.
Well, Joe stole mine.
Joseph, cannot believe this. I'm assuming Star Spangled Crown because I don't think you read.
redacted.
Now, as we begin to wipe our minds clean of
Now,
what Joe has
I
mentioned,
do actually have something I'd like to bring to the table
Oh?
let's
for
hear it.
this. I have a little bit of backdrop. What was that?
I think that was
Was
Krieger.
not I.
Yeah, it was definitely Krieger.
Anyway,
you get it.
let's go here. I really think that, well, I don't want to, let's see, works of fiction. I should have something other than
I was
Cool
going to say,
in my mind.
did you have
Yeah.
one? If you don't
Yeah,
have
go
one,
for
then we may do what Krieger is currently complaining to me about. He wanted to smooth transition into his favorite topic, which is Warhammer 40k. Krieger?
Well, before we get into 40k, we gotta pay homage to the original Warhammer Fantasy Battles. I mean, what else is there to say? We stand Karl Franz, Emperor of Man.
There is a lot of good. I mean, so 40k definitely is a bit more of a what's the word I'm looking for here? Dark take on monarchy, just a bit.
Humanity
It's
in
not called
general.
the Grim Dark for
Is it
future
even
for
technically
no
a
reason.
monarchy? I know he has technical, like I know the God Emperor has children, but would they succeed him, or would he just continue to rule as like a theocracy? As a like
Well,
Well, that would be a chaos. That would be
going
a
into the
chaos.
original plan of the God Emperor. God Emperor is a perpetual. He's immortal. I don't think succession was ever going to be an issue for him.
I think it's gonna go in a way
And
similar
if
to North
if
Korea.
anyone, if anyone was to succeed the God Emperor, according to sticking to his original plan, would mount the door. But
I was about to
like,
say anyone but Rabute Gilliman,
you
because
know,
no one wants him ruling.
no. Besides, none of the Primarchs are fit to rule for one reason or another, especially
But
Ingron.
every single member of the Black Templars is.
Obviously, totally.
Obviously, completely. Not at all my schizo mind going at it.
No, but yeah, no. The Imperium
Yeah.
fan 40K
Like as
is a
it currently
very
stands right now, it's a theocracy, technically.
Gayocracy?
it's
Gayocracy?
a
Like a well, like the God Emperor isn't technically leading anymore. He's kind of it's almost
There.
like a
he
weird
leads in spirit.
it's kind of like a weird inversion of like the current like Japanese monarchy. Like he's a religious leader, like pseudo religious, like leader from the back, but it's like hopped up on so much.
So much
Oh,
psyker
yeah.
soul.
Yeah, yeah.
1,000 psychers must be sacrificed each day for the God Emperor to power the Astronomicon. But no, drifting back to what I was actually going to talk about, besides just making a meme reference to 40K, horror fantasy. There's a lot of good monarchical characters in my opinion. You got Karl Franz, as Emperor of Man. He's probably my favorite character for obvious reasons. And if you don't like Karl Franz, you should seriously reevaluate your opinions on everything in life. And you've also got uh, Lewin Leoncourt, the Frenchies. He's also not bad as a character. Unfortunately, he's French, and so I can't
Oh
like him.
gosh.
You've got the High King of the Dwarves. There's a lot of monarch characters who are pretty cool.
I mean, and then like also when you're dealing with like fantasy, usually it always involves monarchy. Usually, as far as like
Yeah.
high fantasy, there's some degree of resonance with that. Like even like children when they're learning about fantasies and stuff like that, like fairy tales, they always involve like monarchy to some extent, even if it's just like the princess or something like that. It usually always does. And I
Well,
think that says something.
Kids'
Yeah.
Well, this
stories
is
and their consequences have been a disaster for the monarchist movement.
well. Here's something interesting I've noticed. So, the fairy tales we tell our kids come out of that monarchist past, and those fairy tales in their true versions we should really strive to, preserve and retell. But the thing is with modern fantasy, a lot of people don't seem to get it. Now, I have never read the what was it? Game of Thrones. I've only
Ooh,
seen I've only seen a few episodes, or not seen a few episodes. I've seen bits and pieces of a couple of episodes. Um, I so don't this is all coming from cultural osmosis here, right? So if I'm completely wrong here, don't
I'll correct you.
don't hate me. But the sort of, I guess, darker picture of monarchy that's presented in that show kind of doesn't make sense because it's supposed to sort of be based on, from my understanding, like, medieval European monarchist structures, and yet we're church. And then the other, because like the church was fundamentally a part of the European medieval political order, and it's like that with
House
a lot of.
Stark and House Stark and House Lannister, their rivalry was like the House of York and the House of Lancaster, Wars of the Roses.
One of them even
That's
sounds
true.
similar to the other.
Yeah. Well, see, the thing but the thing I'm really pointing out here is I think a lot of fantasy that's written in our modern Republican-dominated world, where everyone's essentially culturally Republican, even if you're a constitutional monarchist, you never actually think that the King Charles III should walk into Parliament and go, "You fired." But
Just like in that one show, King Charles
play,
III.
yeah, I mean,
Just like
it's
the
it's
aptly named
treated.
King Charles III.
I mean, it's you see. I mean, even among us monarchists who want it to happen, we see it as a faint, far-off hope when it's supposed to be an option the king readily has on the table. But my point being, in a lot of fiction where there is kings nowadays and such, a lot of it is just a lot of it's just
It's
they don't
cynical.
get it. I mean, the writers don't get it. So the Myth Inc. M period Y period Inc. books. I can't remember the author's name. They're pretty funny. It's supposed to be it's not all set in a high fantasy setting. It's more of a bunch of different worlds where there's different dimensions, and one dimension is like the 1950s. All the people there are kind of living that sort of setup, and another dimension. It's there's a lot of different dimensions. Is what I'm saying, but the dimension where the main character Skeeve comes from is sort of like a feudal system, and they're it's all played for kind of comedic effect because the king who Skeeve, spoilers by the way, ends in service with after the first couple of books is kind of a coward, and he doesn't want to marry the girl he's betrothed to because she's going to kill him. And then he eventually, once again, spoilers. So if you're actually intent on reading these books, I'm gonna like basically wreck a few of the books, the opening of a few of the books for you. He eventually he ends up getting married. He dies. Skeeve and his friends think it's foul play. It turns out that he didn't die of foul play. He died of natural causes. It just turns out that the queen was really bad at sending a message. And but the monarchy is in that book is just shown to be kind of cruel and calculating, and it really it just fundamentally misunderstands how monarchy kind of needs to work. And I get it, it's for the comedy, I get it, it's for the sake of a funny and lighthearted narrative, but it's not how monarchies actually work. But it does get a lot of stuff right, I will say. The king's two advisors, the financial, I think his name was Grimble or something, and then Chief Hugh Badaxe. Now that is a name that commands respect. How they play
Badaxe?
off each other and their different needs.
Sounds like he's bad with an axe.
Yeah, well, his axe is pretty bad to get struck by. But my point being is that it does get some stuff right, and I'm kind of just picking on it because that's one of the few. I say modern, but the first installment was written like the late '80s.
It's relatively modern.
Relatively modern.
Yeah.
It's. I mean, the guy got in trouble with the IRS. The author was in a years-long battle with the IRS, which is why there's like this gap in publication dates. So it's. I guess what I'm saying is modern fantasy, it uses the trappings of monarchism, but it either kind of glosses over what it means or just outright misunderstands it to
It's cynical.
completely
I would
sum
say-
up what
Yeah,
didn't need to be a long rant.
Yeah, it's cynical. Like everything, like if you're depicting a monarchy in fiction and you're American, even if you're British or even Spanish sometimes, it's usually always cynical in its depiction.
I
And
just
I think
I just
it's
thought of something.
ingrained. Oh yeah.
Well, yeah. Go ahead, Nick.
Kingdom Come Deliverance.
Oh
That
yeah.
I've played. Okay, actually, I could talk about that. I actually wanted to make my points as well. So, very quickly before I get to Kingdom Come, first I will address in Game of Thrones. If you've actually read A Song of Ice and Fire, I think that George R. R. Martin was more kind of going for the idea of like court scheming and all that fun stuff.
Yeah.
And the show got a little carried away with the debauchery. Like, no one denies there was debauchery in monarchical systems. There always has been, there always will be, as there is in everything, but they overplayed it a lot.
Yeah, they basically
And then,
pumped it with a lot of steroids, I would say.
yeah, plus, HBO's got to have like 80 million nude scenes or else it's not a proper TV show. But
I mean, not like any
Good.
of those medieval people would be fully clothed or something like that.
yeah, well, to address Victor's point, he actually makes a really good point. So Kingdom Come Deliverance, in case you don't know, it is a video game, and it is actually set in a historic period with historic characters. It is set in, I think, 14th?
It is set up during the Hussite Wars.
So 14th century Europe. So this is like 1300.
No.
But yeah, it's 14th. It's like late
I
1300s. Yeah.
thought the Hussites were in the early 1500s.
No.
No,
They would've
the
been way earlier.
Hussites were like proto-Protestants, and they were essentially before purge the Hussites.
Yeah.
I'm fact checking this.
This was
It's early
Sigismund.
1400s.
Okay, so it would have been 15th century. So the game takes place in the early 15th century, and it takes place during a very important moment in the history of the Holy Roman Empire. Basically, the king, whose name I cannot remember at this point, he was a Charles, I believe, had passed away, and as he did historically, and his son Wenceslaus was slated to take over the empire, and he became king of Bohemia. But then his half-brother, King Sigismund of Hungary, decided that he wanted to be the Holy Roman Emperor, not Wenceslaus, especially considering Wenceslaus was weak, and I mean, he was kind of the personification of a Game of Thrones character, if that makes sense. So what happened is that Sigismund took his armies from Hungary, and he also recruited a lot of Turkic peoples to fight in his army, what are called Cumans in the game, and historically that's what they were called. So he took his army of Hungarians and Cumans and marched north into Bohemia and invaded. And the game doesn't place this as like innocent civilian fighting against evil king. Like, whenever you're fighting, you're usually fighting for the Count of Radzig, or of I forget one of the other towns that you help fight with. But you're fighting for the Count and you're fighting for the king. Like, when you charge into battle, you say for King Wenceslaus IV. And so it's not a bad king, good peasant thing. It's a good peasant fighting for good king against bad king. Now, was Wenceslaus a good king? No. But it still gives you the idea that monarchy just makes sense in this system. And in this system, you have guards, you have all of the trappings, you have everything that looks normal to a monarchy, and it all functions very well and historically accurate. It's one of the best pieces of video game fiction I've ever seen or played. And
the actual story of the character you play, though, is a little.
Could be better. The gameplay's fun though, and I like the characters. They probably should have fleshed it out a bit more, but otherwise, it actually presents monarchy in a very, very bright light when compared to a lot of modern fiction, and I really love the game. It's a great depiction of just historical monarchy, historical people, and I mean, honestly, that's the best part of it, is the people, because you can go from talking to the highest people in the land, right? Sigismund, his marshal, like all these people, all the way down to the lowliest pig farmer, and everyone has their own story, and it even is accurate to like how people lived back then, like with the only people who can read are priests, and if you want to learn how to read messages that you're given, you have to like spend a couple weeks with this priest learning how to read. But on the topic of monarchy, it does display it very well. You're always fighting for the count, and you're doing your whole thing. I honestly loved it. I highly recommend it. Great piece of monarchist fiction. Now,
The only weakness of that game is there's no third-person camera.
I prefer the first person, but yes,
I actually play
The
Red
whole
Dead 2
first
in
person versus
first-person
third
mode.
person is a whole debate.
third person is for weaklings.
I
But-
play Red Dead in first person.
Third person works for some games, but like if you want a truly narrative, the game that you can immerse yourself into, first person is obviously the superior choice.
Yeah. Well, and as for literature, one of the greatest pieces ever of pro-monarchist, not really literature, but just legend, is Arthurian legend. You know, King Arthur, his Knights of the Round Table, Lancelot, all of the fun stories from that. Like, reading that, and when I was first reading it, it was one of the things that helped me get into Monarchy, because it was just so gripping, and it just presented everything in such a beautiful way. I absolutely love Arthurian legend.
I kind of want to talk about this because like you were saying earlier, like there's some like this real like cynical. I don't remember who said this. Like this real cynical view on like fantasy and monarchy, like modern fantasy and stuff. I think that's a
I think
reflection
that
of like
yeah,
the real world because
I think that's
in like the
basically
last 20 years we've had the war on
yeah.
terror. We're having the war of drugs. I mean, it's a like real dark times that like because of the internet, like people can like truly see all the bad stuff happening around the world. And then noticed it makes a lot of very cynical, more cynical than I think ever.
Yeah.
As I go into this,
Yeah.
and it's just interesting to see how it's been reflected onto fantasy and like the view on monarchy. Like Game of Thrones. Be like, what if, to quote the infamous meme, what if everyone is bad?
Yeah. And honestly, I think that a great change of pace when it comes to fiction, if you are an aspiring writer and you're for some reason listening to us, then try and write some high fantasy that's not like just so depressive about monarchy. Like, go, like, if you want a really good, so what I always found is, like, if I'm ever writing anything fictional, I will usually look at art depicting like a theme that I want to talk about, and then I will write. Go look up like paintings, like the famous painting of the I think it's queen or princess knighting, well, a knight, and like just all these very high medieval, bright, kind of happy artwork. Proud artwork. It's a great way to get into the mood for writing stuff like that, and write an amazing book. We always encourage people to write just positively about monarchy and to promote how it really is.
And this actually is so we talk about, good kings and bad kings and everything in between, how books shape, not necessarily shape, but how books depict monarchy. And sometimes certain people come away from learning about bad kings to say that there should be a sort of morality code or a code of ethics for a monarch. I'd like to get your guys' thoughts on that.
We have it. It's
Called chivalry.
It's called the Code of Chivalry, but also the Ten Commandments, the Gospels, the New Testament, the moral as basically the Bible.
Yeah,
I mean, I mean, see, this is the problem where people look at the failures of a particular people, right? And they say clearly the system must be broken because guy was bad. And yes, to a certain extent, if the system if there's a lot of bad men coming out of the system, like say the United States Congress, then there's a chance that the system itself is to blame. But there's also a chance that no matter how good of a system you have, we're men. Man is fallen. Um, while the only two humans to never sin was our blessed mother and the God man Jesus Christ. So sometimes, even in a good system, you're going to get some bad apples. It's all about ensuring that the system you have is set up in such a way that those bad apples are few and far between. And monarchy is not utopia. Monarchy never promises utopia. We never promise a system where everything is going to be, good. Once again, going back to Lord of the Rings for the moment, it's not all good guys and bad guys. Okay, I guess secondly, technically last steward of Gondor before Aragorn returns, right? And the stewards were essentially a monarchical institution, though they weren't the kings because they were the stewards of the king. But the second to last steward basically went mad, and if he had it his way, things would have gone a lot worse. Spoilers once again, sorry, but so that's the thing, right? So even in a good system, human nature is what human nature is, right? And you can help that somewhat by having a system where the heirs are brought up saying, "Hey, if you do not if you don't govern your people to the best of your ability and you neglect your duty, you're gonna rot in hell if you die unrepentant of that crime, because God gave you these people to care for and to govern, to be his for you to be his steward of his people. you know um that's that sounds like a pretty good enticement to do good to me. you know um I don't know about you guys, but if I was in that position, I kind of want to do as good of a job as possible. I'm just saying.
Yeah. Well, and one thing that I'd like to also address when people are talking about monarchy bad, we deal with these people all the time, so this is pretty. We've documented kind of ideas here. They always bring up the bad kings and the bad emperors and how they screw things
Yep.
up. But I want to do a quick thought experiment. So I'm going to go one by one, and I'm going to ask each of you to name a monarch from a specific country. Just immediately the first one off the top of your head. All right?
Okay.
Victor, name a king of Spain.
Ferdinand and Isabella.
Krieger, name a king of, an emperor of the HRE.
Otto.
Joe, name a king of France.
The Sun King.
Charles, name a king of England.
Is that even a question? James the Second.
John, name. Let's do something interesting. Name a king of Hungary. Can you name one?
Of course, King Stephen the Great.
Very good. So, our answers, we had Ferdinand and Isabella from Victor. We had Krieger. I made you do France, did I?
The HRE.
You did HRA, you said Otto. Joe said Sun King. Charles said Bonnie Prince Charlie. And John said Saint
No, he
Stephen.
said
No, I
James
said
II.
James the Second.
Oh, James II. My bad. Either way, we as monarchists are obviously going to just name positive monarchs because they're right off the top of our head, right? Now, I'm imagining we don't have any anti-monarchists here, but if I asked them to name some monarchs, they'd either name current monarchs or probably bad monarchs, right? Caligula or Charles V of France, right? People who
Or
were
Henry
not.
VIII.
Yeah, exactly. And that's all good and everything. But then I'd like to propose this question. Charles, do you know anything about King Clovis II of France?
Oh, wasn't he the son of Charlemagne and the?
That would
Well,
be that would be Louis, not Clovis.
Oh wait, Clovis was Charlemagne's father, right? No wait,
No, he was of the Merovingians.
he was the one who converted. He was the one who was baptized. I know that.
Yes. Here,
Well,
let's try.
obviously they were all baptized, but I mean, he was the
Let's-
one who converted to Catholicism.
That's fair. Krieger, tell me anything that you know about Alfonso II.
Alfonso II.
Don't
You
worry, I
know,
don't. I don't. I don't. I
I
don't trust you.
knew. I'm
No.
pretty sure I read about him, and I can't remember right now.
It's fine. My point is, I'm naming monarchs who are less well known. And here's the thing about less well known monarchs. Do you know why they're less well known? It's because, sure, they didn't do anything amazing, right? They didn't pull a Louis the 16th or a Louis the 14th, but they also didn't pull a Caligula or a Charles V. It's because the average monarch is just as good, if not better. Actually, they are better than an average political candidate, right? Or political leader. Like if I asked you to name the third last British prime minister, right? You guys probably wouldn't be able to do that. My point being is that just because there are bad apples,
Is it? I'm gonna take a stab at it. Is it? Is it James? Is it Cameron?
I don't remember. But my point being, actually, it might be Johnson. Either way, my point being is that the average monarch who you don't think about, right, in a line of succession, like if you're going through a list of monarchs, right, you probably won't be able to tell me the life story or a general summary of a king's life unless they did something horrendous or amazing. And it's because, like I said, they're average. They're, living in their kingdom at that time was normal. There was nothing spectacular. And that's the point. It's stability. Stability is key, and if a monarch is stable, there's nothing special about him to commemorate. He's just a guy. I mean, one of the greatest examples of this was Antoninus Pius, Roman emperor. Not many people know who he is. Many people know more of Augustus, Diocletian, Caligula, and
Nero.
then Nero, Antoninus's grandson. What's his name? Gladiator. Someone help me out here.
Spartacus?
No. That was a slip.
Much higher.
My Roman history is failing me today.
My
This
Roman
is
history is
the one who liked to fight. Either way, but people like to remember the negatives and the very positives. But Antoninus Pius was picked by Hadrian to be his successor, so that Marcus Aurelius would then be the successor of Hadrian, but he'd also be old enough. Well, Antoninus Pius ended up living like 20 years longer than Hadrian had expected, and he had the most stable reign of any Roman emperor. And the thing about that is that no one remembers him. And he's often called by historians at least, the amazingly mediocre emperor. Because things were so stable, no one really cares. He didn't do anything amazing like go and conquer Gaul or Germania, but he also didn't do anything to destroy the empire. The biggest thing that people remember was the Antonine Plague, but that, wasn't his fault. So stability, and great stability, will make you a forgotten monarch. My point being, if we don't know most monarchs and they're average to us, that means they're good. It means they were stable. Hence why I think that the anti-monarchist point of, I can name this bad king, and this bad king, is just kind of null and void.
And it also
I'd say
applies to
this.
presidents.
Also,
Like, could anybody name a good, stable president or a president that was in there long enough for it to be like stable
Ulysses
Because
Grant.
I can't.
Teddy?
Maybe.
FDR.
FDR
please.
messed everything. Okay,
Yeah, no,
firstly,
FDR ruined everything.
okay,
Well,
Will
not
isn't
against
here,
FDR.
so I'm free, right? Will isn't here, so nothing
Yeah,
can
you're free.
stop me. Okay, FDR, this absolute dude, and you can learn about some of the stuff I'm going to be saying, or all the stuff I'm going to be saying, from Puritan's Empire: A Catholic Perspective on American History by Charles Coulomb. He temporarily gets America off the gold standard
Now,
under the promise that
before I
he does all this stuff, right? And then he just bold-faced lies. He creates the Social Security Administration. Yeah, that's going great. Everything that he does, okay, is ultimately to the detriment of the American economy. Okay, he did not get America out of the Depression. And no, World War II didn't get America out of the Depression either, because sending a bunch of your skilled laborers and your nation's sons to die in some field in France or some beach in Iwo Jima, okay, doesn't contribute to the economy, right?
Well,
FDR's
it's
dying,
the
okay, and
yeah. I
the
mean, the
economic restrictions being
corporation.
loosened by Truman is what got America out of the Depression. Okay, I'm sorry. Anyways,
Counterpoint, you didn't say good. You just said long reigning.
he said
You
long
didn't
I
reigning and
said
say
stable.
stability. America in the
I
1930s was not very stable.
it was still wasn't like
I
things
can't
were
name anyone
bearable, but
else but
things.
Washington really.
I mean,
And
oh,
as soon as
Lincoln was
Washington left, it
president.
just exploded. I
Yeah.
can't really think of any.
Gerald
The thing
Ford,
is
maybe?
with presidents, and I'm sure we've made this point at some point, but presidents, because they have so very little time in power, they have to get all the things done that they want done very quickly, which causes super big instability. Like when you have people jumping from relative extremes of Biden to Trump, and then like Bush to Obama to Trump to Biden is massive, and it doesn't do us very much good, because we start with Bush, right, which is standard Republican, whatever, and then we jump to Obama, suddenly higher taxes, more of the Obamacare, all this stuff, and we jump to Trump and it's tax cuts and it's more military spending. Then we jump to
No Obamacare.
Biden, and then everything's horrible under
Oh,
Biden.
we had the little thing called COVID in 2020, which led
Yeah,
up to the election. You
Well,
can't
in
ignore that.
fairness, you can't blame Trump for that. You might be able to blame Fauci for that in part, but you can't
yeah,
blame you can't really blame any world
but
leader
it,
except
it
those who
assists
were
our
involved with that lab.
it assists our point, however, in the fact that, like, I mean, even before COVID, and continuing after, these rapid shifts in power are not good for life in America.
Yeah, I've likened it to a national tug of war every like 4 years. And I don't think, I mean, I guess you could say, oh, well, long term presidents, lifelong presidents, but those are basically like dictators,
Dictators.
or they've, regardless of whether they are like life reigning, they still come from a party and they still are elected via a party. So
Yeah.
still you're not getting the unity, nor are you getting the longevity of a monarch in any of those cases.
And well,
Yeah.
and if you're seriously considering, the solution to the whole every 4 or 8 years, there's just massive shifts in domestic policy, and if you're proposing lifelong presidency,
And
that's basically a monarchy in all
Krieger,
but name, basically.
if I may, please enunciate your words, because I think you just gave Charles a heart attack. Shifts.
okay,
He said
well,
shifts.
I know, but or uh, see, this is the other thing too. It's right now. Let's assume, let's stick with the Republicans are the good guys socially myth. They're not. They're
Yeah,
just
they're not.
Democrats doing
They're
the speed
horrible.
limit.
They're
But
sellouts.
objectively, if they lived during the medieval times, they would have probably all been like looked at strangely and then executed. But
By the way, I'm stealing that line of Democrats doing the speed limit.
well, yeah. Well, I got it from somewhere else, so I mean it's public domain at this point. But or the actual quote is liberals doing the speed limit. American conserv.
Fair enough.
Okay, but anyways, we gotta be correct in our piracy. But the thing is, let's just say that the Republicans really were the good guys. We still live in a system where half the time the good guys aren't in power, and the the Democrats. I know it's a people will say like in a sarcastic way, Democrats, but there's some devilry at work in that party platform. I'm just saying the wholesale slaughter of infants. Someone put that idea there. I'm
Yeah,
just
it doesn't help we're deciding our next leader on a coin flip. It doesn't help. matters at all.
And the
It's
Electoral
almost as
College, which is supposed to be there to, overturn the people are being stupid.
Yeah, that
Yeah,
doesn't happen anymore.
when does that ever intentionally worked?
Like
I
there are
mean,
some electors that have switched their votes, but most
It's never mattered.
states, I think a good bit of states have they can penalize people who like go against the
The
state
popular vote,
electors.
which defeats
Yeah.
the entire point of the Electoral College, because the entire point of the Electoral College is to overturn the people if the people are being,
I was going to
stupid.
say, if we want to, you know what we could do? We could do, if you know what accelerationism is, let's do Republican accelerationism, where we accelerate the Electoral College to a point where they basically just become noble electors, and then we just phase out the idea of being elected into it and turn it into nobility again.
So
Yeah, I mean,
we would
or
make it
maybe the
like
guy at the, and maybe the guy at the top of the food chain could say, you know what? I think that I am so talented and I can raise my son to be as talented as me. So I'm a
Not
king
the
now.
not the current one though.
It's
We don't want
crazy to
crack
me.
king.
Of course. Oh, of
Yeah,
course. And not the current one. I'm just speaking hypothetically.
with how like big small businesses are or family run businesses are in America, that people don't really get the concept of like training somebody to succeed you. It just surprises me. I guess it's just like the Republican Kool-Aid drinking, like small R Republican. But like that happens a lot in America. Like you have people actively as we speak training their children to succeed them in a family business. And oftentimes those successors are pretty good because they've been trained and they've went to school for that and stuff like that. Now a lot of the time people they don't want to do it, but
Or
you know, if you have
perhaps,
enough children, one's going to be a-okay.
almost as if it's
however,
something
you see this a
natural.
lot with
Hmm?
several long-term family-run businesses. Family don't want to run it no more, so they sell it.
I think that's like the Republican idea where I think that's like republicanism kind of seeping in, you know.
yeah,
That might just be my outlook on it, but yeah.
okay. I gotta say this. So there was a family that owned a series of pharmacies where I live, and the guy, took over from his dad fully, I guess, and he, now he's a investor or whatever. He sold, you know, and I gotta say, it's just the worst thing in the world. And this is another thing why, being tied to land specifically, I think is a good idea, because if you're a local noble, I mean, hypothetically, you could be able to sell the land. You can; it belongs to your family, not to you. But let's say you could sell your land. Okay, great. Where are you going to go? All the rest of the land's owned by a bunch of other, noble lords. What you going to do with all that money, smart guy? Right. Whereas with which is why, a local noble has to, even if he isn't being virtuous for the sake of being virtuous, he he isn't particularly compelled by the salvation of his own soul as a motive. um he still is going to have to at least pretend to care about his people, because he's kind of stuck there. When you think about it, that's he and his family is kind of stuck there, but with family small businesses, there's nothing really stopping it. If you're I wouldn't I actually kind of wouldn't mind this. If you had a business that has been your family for, let's say, 3 generations or more, and you want to sell it, and you don't have a even though you are deemed competent and capable of handling it, and you sell it to somebody other than someone else in your family, there should be like a 50% uh 50% of your income from that sale has to go to the government. Or no, not the government. Your employees who you're selling out. There you go. your employees and your fellow family members who you're selling out. There we go. That's a law. Okay.
Interesting.
Anyway, yeah, that is a very interesting take on this. We've covered a lot of ground tonight.
I would, before we close, I would actually like to bring up one more topic. There seems to be a Twitter argument flaming up, and so I want our opinions. I'm pretty sure I know how this is going to go, because I don't think any of us are on the other side of this argument, but Charlemagne, God's goofiest goober or Satan's strongest soldier? Victor.
God's goofiest goober.
Krieger.
I'm not
Krieger.
gonna.
Did you hear the question?
Who were we talking about? Freemasons?
Charlemagne, God's
Oh.
goofiest goober or Satan's strongest soldier?
What is the argument for him being Satan's strongest soldier? Like, I'm genuinely curious.
Ortho bros.
Over Ortho Bros. Why do you have to be so cringe?
It's
It's
over,
so
bro.
based in other
You
points.
do know we have an Eastern
So-
Cath, right?
That's not orthodox. But we
That's
will address
just
him in a
okay.
moment. Krieger, your answer.
He wasn't a goof. He wasn't enough of a goofy goober.
Not enough. Gotcha. Joe, God's goofiest goober or Satan's strongest soldier?
I will go with neutrality on this one.
Carl?
Joe, you had one job. He's a blessed. I'm gonna go with that. There's still like one diocese in Germany or like 3 that actually have a mass for him, but he's not on his. He's kind of his canonization
Cultus-
status is
His
kind of in
cultus was
question.
recognized. His cultus was
Okay,
recognized.
but he was beatified by an anti-pope, but no one obviously. Well, I mean, some people knew it at the time, but it was an unsettled question at the time. So all I'm saying is probably, but yeah, that's all I'm gonna say.
And our glorious chancellor.
Yeah, I would say the former. I mean, I'd say God save Blessed Emperor Charlemagne and God save Saint Constantine the Great.
Absolutely, brother. And then, of course, I'm obviously on the side of him being God's goofiest goober. It seems that Twitter ortho bros would disagree with us, and so we will get plenty of hate comments for that, and we can't wait to see them.
Yes, and one final word of closing before we go. And Minister, our thoughts and prayers are going to be extended out to the students, faculty, staff, and alumni of the venerable universities, Washington State University and Oregon State University, whose athletic programs have been de facto killed today by Oregon and Washington joining the Big Ten, and later this weekend, if these rumors hold true, Arizona State, and Utah joining the Big 12 conference.
What is this for?
Leaving those two, along with Stanford and Cal, to essentially be homeless for their college athletics. Cal and Stanford, their universities will be fine. Even if they don't find athletic homes, their universities are going to be very, very much in the public spotlight and in like notoriety. Washington State and Oregon State, I really feel for them because they will effectively be losing out on tens of millions a year. And there's really no way for them to recover that.
I think they can recoup
I'm
in
really
some
confused.
Really, they're not getting an invite to the Big Ten, that's for sure. The Washington
would
Pacific
be-
Northwest is already covered by Washington and Oregon.
It would be incredibly funny to me to see Arizona in the Big Ten. That's silly.
I don't even know what what you're all talking about.
As
Or-
someone
Basically,
who's
the Big Ten is like the big
Let's
northern
allow Trad
conference.
to explain because he lives in actual Big Ten country.
yes, I do. Yeah, as someone who lives in Big Ten country and is about to attend a Big Ten school, I personally welcome it because it means we have someone else to lose to. Unless Matt Rule decides to pull through and actually let us win some games. Other than that, I mean, I don't think their programs will be cut. I think the Big Ten will let them in because the Big Ten is the Big Ten, and they always want money. Other than that, nothing particularly is going to change. And to address, and I know every Husker fan is going to ask the question. No, they're not going to let you buy beer at Memorial Stadium. Stop asking. But yes.
They should let you buy beer at Memorial
No, they
Stadium.
made
I don't even know
it
what this
against the
is.
rules. No alcohol on or around the stadium premises, which is a win for Chuck.
That is cringe.
As someone
is
who works at
bad.
those games, hold on. As someone who works at those games, I can tell you, no one follows that rule. I found so many shooters being little bottles of liquor. I found so many shooters on the ground, you would not believe it. People throw them up in the stands to each other.
Man, I
Like, it's
swear,
crazy.
for a country that like at one point outlawed the distribution of alcohol, we are a drunk country, and I'm
Mhm.
loving it.
Oh,
We
yeah.
are not drunk enough.
We are
We are not
God's
drunk enough.
drunkest drivers.
Yes, we
I-
are.
Alcohola awaits my fellow drunk drivers.
I gotta
Alcohol.
say, as someone who isn't very athletic, it'd probably be the only way that I could sit through a game is if I was
Zooked. If you were
under the
zooked out of your mind, yeah.
You could come sit in the freezer with me because that's what I do.
God
'Cause
save alcohol.
I mean, okay, no. But here's the
Bombshell.
thing, right? Obviously, willfully getting drunk is a mortal sin, but God did give us wine to cheer our hearts or cheer our souls, right? It's in the blessing for not like the Eucharistic blessing of wine, obviously, but like the blessing of wine for normal, wine that isn't transubstantiated. That's
Insert.
in there, right?
I was about to say, insert image of Catholic priest drinking from a stein.
Yeah, no, I mean, right? God gave us wine to cheer our souls, right? So I'm
And I'm pretty sure beer is like the earliest drink known to mankind as well.
Yeah, I think it was a form of
Actually, it was
currency.
it was, and also here's the interesting historical bit on that. Beer was considered the standard, like whenever you think of like the most standard of standard beverages, you usually think water. But
Yeah,
up
no.
until basically the late 1800s, that wasn't ever a safe idea. So
Unless you
beer was
boil
kind
the
of the
water.
standard, or wine if you were in France. Yeah, but that
Yeah,
wasn't really possible.
you had much greater of a chance of dying from drinking like mud water than like beer
Mhm.
Yeah, and
or
like I
any
said,
other alcohol.
man, being a medieval peasant wouldn't be horrible. You do your work in the field that you need to do for the day, sit down, have some beer, and then have
Crack
dinner, and then
open
go
a
to
Why
bed.
do you
cold one.
think Europeans tend to hold their alcohol a lot better than like Native Americans and others? Because
Younger
we
drinking
were
age.
raised on alcohol, basically.
Younger drinking age.
And I think now is the time to call for the legal drinking age to be dropped at least 18.
Yeah,
Mhm.
On that bombshell, Charles.
I don't care if the experts say my liver. I don't care.
alas, for there's editing before me. If you would like to join us live on Monarchist Minute, then you can follow us to our Discord. Updated link
In the
in
description
the description
below.
the
below.
description below.
If you would like to follow us on not Twitter, then
No, we're not calling it by that dumb name. Keep calling it Twitter.
We're going to call it
Okay.
Twitter, and you
X.
won't like it.
We will call it X, and
we
you
will call it
Z.
A. We'll call it A through We'll call it the other 25 letters of the alphabet, but not that one. If you would like to join us on B, then you can follow us to our Discord, Link
in
in the description
Description
below.
below.
If you would like to stay tuned to an upcoming project,
Anyway,
hopefully by the end of August, then you can check out our website. Link in the
in the
description
description below.
We'll also be updating you on, our
Twitter and all the fun stuff.
Twitter and other places which you can join by clicking that link
In the description
In the
below.
description below.
Is that a clever tie-in? Okay. Now it is time to conclude in prayer. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Ghost. Amen. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Ghost. Amen. All right, until next week, may God bless you, and may God bless the United States of America.